Morning, everybody. Simon Hibbert, Design Ethos. Very happy to be here. You know what I really like is when things are very relaxed and calm and jovial, and I feel like that's what this group is. I really don't enjoy presenting in front of a big group. I'd much rather do what Justin did and sit down, and just sit on the nice chair. But then Ben put this up here. I think we've reached almost the maximum of its height. I realize now I'm now an architect in a box, which is not a good thing. So I'll try to keep this light. Basically, what I had to do a few weeks back, if you remember, I did a presentation to Serrano Middle School, and that was interesting because that audience, I thought we might get a few laughs or some comments. It was just crickets.
No, that's comedy.
So, yeah. So first impressions, I don't know if you can tell I'm tall. I like dad jokes. I like really dumb jokes, and I've tried to include a few in here. So basically, this presentation, if you will, is really what I gave to the middle school students. So there will be some things that we'll just kind of fast forward through, and then at the end I put a few examples of my work. But please interrupt with any questions as we go. So because this was basically about, go ahead and skip that one. This was basically about what does an architect do? So that's what I was presenting at the middle school. So anybody know where that is? There it is.
No kidding.
I thought the kids might get a laugh out of that. No, nothing. Maybe I should have put pipeline. I don't know. Yeah. Next, please. So I like to surf, as some of you guys know. So anyway, does anybody know what this is a picture of?
Burj Khalifa.
Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world, right? Yeah. So I didn't work on that.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Next slide. I worked on that one.
Your humor is going to be well served here.
Yeah, actually, it helps a lot.
Are you a painter?
No. Actually, if you go back just real quick, so the other thing I'll say is that this presentation I did was about 40 or 45 minutes, so Pierre's going to cut me off at any moment. I know that. I did have the opportunity to work overseas for many years. I was traveling about once a month to either the Middle East or to China, which was wonderful. I would have never had that experience if it weren't for the firms that I was working for before I started my own practice. And we did really work on some fantastic projects. I mean, if you have ever heard the phrase "money is no object," then that's from Dubai. I mean, literally, I worked on projects where we would walk into the first meeting and they said, "There's no budget." And so that's actually really difficult, because then it's like if you gave an architect or an artist a blank piece of paper and said, "Draw something." We all need constraints, you know. So usually when we start projects, there's a budget constraint and code constraints and all so on and so forth. But when you just go blank paper, that's even more of a challenge. So that is the Burj Khalifa. These are some luxury townhomes in and around the area, and we did some absolutely beautiful homes for people that have more money than I'll ever see.
Do they drive on the right side of the street or the left?
They drive on the right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. Not like Singapore or the UK or Japan. Yeah. So here's my logo. Simon Hibbert, architect. Well, sort of. What do I mean by that? I'm a designer. I'm not a licensed architect. I didn't get my license. Don't worry, it doesn't mean the buildings that I design are going to fall down. In California, by state law, when you do 3 stories or less wood frame construction, you do not need to be licensed. We do have licensed professionals at our beck and call, but we use them for our multifamily projects when we have to stamp. So most of the time, if Kyle were here on the Zoom, he would know what we're talking about too. But the architectural plans are always, the structural plans and calculations are always stamped, but the architectural plans are not. So we use it for commercial work or for multifamily work, but not for typical residential. But again, don't worry, everything's to code. Does anybody know what that building is?
Oh, that's the Burj Al Arab.
Nice. That's a little bit harder. This is my favorite building in the world. This is also in Dubai. Oddly enough, it was designed by an English architect, which is not why I like it, but it's very, very difficult to get into that building. You have to be invited. And I used to work with an architect who comes from a family of diplomats, and he got us in. And so that was incredible. It is just beautiful, beautiful building. Next, please. I'll go through these a little bit faster. I didn't work on this either, but this is a really cool project. These are shipping containers.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have heard of like modular design and reuse, right? So I have designed, it's probably 10 projects that use shipping containers. None of them have come to fruition because, quite honestly, it's more expensive to build out of reused materials than to just build out of stick frame construction. And that's,
No kidding.
that's the honest truth, unfortunately. I had a wonderful client who was going to get the containers for free, and it was going to cost him more to cut holes and get them shipped down than to just build it out of wood frame. So
Where is it?
that one, I don't know honestly. I just pulled it up because I wanted to show the kids an idea of, like, architects can do all kinds of different stuff. I suppose I should just stop for a second and say I specialize in residential architecture. I mean, obviously there are people that do airports and hotels and you name it, right? But I've always been drawn to houses, and not only that, but I really like difficult projects, and I really like small architecture, so like ADUs or tiny houses or those kinds of things. I like the challenge of fitting all of that into one small puzzle. So, this was for the kids again. I just wanted to show them. This is the Vans offices. I don't know, like Vans skateboard company. They used shipping containers as part of their corporate office. Anyway, so this is more like what I do, kind of more traditional residential. We do all kinds of styles, like from contemporary to traditional, but this is more in my realm. So I was trying to get them to understand, to go from sky rises all the way down to sort of my level. We'll go past this one just quickly. I just wanted to give them an idea of, like, what else other architects can do, some really creative stuff. Okay, how do construction workers party? They raise the roof. Yeah. Terrible, right? There are more. Don't worry. Yeah, there are more. We start all of our projects. The first phase is by hand. Some of our BTM folks have seen this, but so this is the type of master planning that I used to do when I first started my career. I actually got my degree in city planning, not in architecture, and worked in 2D, basically top down from above for years and years. And I had really great mentors that taught me how to draw and how to illustrate and basically how to communicate ideas. One of the biggest things in architecture is communication of ideas. And one of my best mentors, when he first came to this country from Afghanistan, he didn't speak a word of English, but he could draw like all get out. And so that was how he communicated his ideas to his clients, and they could understand it. So I learned a lot from him. This is the type of work that I did in my previous architectural life when I was working for some firms here in Orange County. This might not be that easy to recognize. Is right over by the 405 and the 133 heading down to Laguna Beach, Laguna Altura, I think it's called now. So we did a lot of work for the Irvine Company, doing planning and architecture design, and we designed clubhouses and entire neighborhoods, and coordinate with landscape architects and engineers and traffic engineers and you name it. So this was one of those. This is in Tustin at the Marine base after they started to parcelize that land and sell it off. So I think this one was by maybe William Lyon Homes or so, but that was one of the projects I worked on. This is a project that I did not do, but this is by a architect up in the Seattle area, if I recall correctly. He specializes in what are called pocket neighborhoods. So that's small construction, but sort of like these mini enclaves of residential. They're very traditional in nature, but obviously they're built with modern techniques. And the idea is that there are maybe 6 or 8 homes that share this kind of common area, like almost like a Melrose Place kind of idea. Bringing back that Americana tradition of sitting out on the porch. There are multiple people watching while the kids are out playing. So, you know who's in your neighborhood, who shouldn't be there, all that kind of stuff, all built into one. And what you see too is that there's a common building at the end, like common kind of clubhouse, nice small scale. And then behind all of this are the garages and the alleys. So kind of all the cars and utilities and all that kind of stuff are in the back. But Raphael sees this and he sees ADUs.
Are those considered townhomes?
They would probably be fee simple, actually. Yeah.
What? Be what?
Fee simple. So like individual lots.
Simple.
Fee simple. Yeah. Like a normal house that you would buy with a property line on either side. And
So they're not attached.
So they're not attached.
They might be like 0 lot lines or garden homes.
You
But
could
yeah,
do
but
that,
0
yeah.
lot lines,
What'd you say?
Did you go to law school?
No,
Sounds like
that's
you do.
right. Yeah. So actually, not to sound arrogant, but like I have to know a little bit about sort of everything, right? And I know probably less than that.
Simon, what was that neighborhood called?
Well, we call them pocket neighborhoods.
Pocket neighborhoods.
Yeah. Marble is a valuable building material and should not be taken for granted. I taught politics. Yeah.
I get it.
Okay, this is how I started drawing, like everybody, right? And when I was a kid, I really enjoyed taking art classes, and that's as far as I got. No. I put this up here because I wanted to show the kids, like, we all draw stick figures, right? And number one thing I hear when I draw perspectives, which I'll show you in a second, I said, oh, I can't draw, I don't know how to draw, it's really difficult. Well, it is, but little by little, we just keep going, right? Just keep trying. So then I would eventually get to that level. But before I left the firm that I was working at, this would be the number one thing that I would do. These are called renderings or pencil sketches in this case. Sometimes they're in color, sometimes they're watercolor, sometimes they're digital. I'll show you some different examples. But and I don't mean to sound arrogant when I say this. Not everybody can draw this way. And what I mean by that is the first day I walked into an architectural office, there was a guy who was drawing perspectives like this, and I said, wow, that's what I want to do. And he was a hired consultant for that firm. And most of the other architects were just drawing in 2D and drawing what you would typically see as plans. But I said, how do I get to that? And so that was my goal. And so I just worked and worked and worked to try to get to that point. And I got close. Honestly, if I showed you, some other people's work, you'd be blown away. But I got close, and I really enjoyed doing that type of work because then people from other teams within the firm would come and ask me to illustrate their projects for their clients, and that was a lot of fun because then I felt useful, right? I mean, otherwise I was sort of just another line architect, if you will, or designer. But when I could do this, then I could feel like I could help them convey their ideas, which they had in their minds, but they couldn't get out on the paper. And usually when you start a meeting and you show the clients this, they go, wow, that's it, right? And so that's a lot of fun. So that was where I got the satisfaction, was from putting in that hard work and then trying to communicate those ideas. I do watercolor for fun. This is in Ireland. We've had the opportunity to travel here and there. But again, I was just trying to show the kids this breadth of, like, if you just try a little bit every day, keep at it. Because the whole point of that presentation for the kids of all these different professionals that had come in was to try to show them, okay, if you guys choose a path, you can get to your goals little bit by little bit.
Do you use watercolor a fair amount in your projects with clients?
Not so much anymore. It's not to say it's a dying art, but because of basically this is a computer rendering. So that's looks like a photograph, yeah, right? But that's actually generated in the computer. Because these types of things have become so much more prevalent and easier to access, and there are free programs that do it, then so many people go to this as opposed to spending the time doing the watercolor. The watercolor is wonderful, right? But the thing is, if I have to change it, which design always includes changes, now I'm kind of stuck. Whereas this, it's like if somebody said, I don't want green, I want brown, boom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super easy. Yeah. So nowadays we do more of those. I just wanted to show the kids, this is what a typical first phase for us looks like. So we've done the measurements on site, we've created a concept plan, and then this is what we present to the clients. This is a concept floor plan for a single family house. Then our next phase, we do everything in 3D nowadays, so that the homeowners can really get a good sense of what it's going to look like, the new versus the old, and we can actually cut slices into the house so they can see what those rooms look like. It's not quite as fancy as like HD TV and all the stuff is flying in, but it still gets the job done. Okay, so this one was a funny one for the kids. Does anybody know what this is? We might be all too old in this room. So this is a program called The Sims. Oh, yeah. Have you ever heard of The Sims?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I thought the kids might get a kick out of this one too. Some of them knew what it was. So there's a program that I think you can even play online now. And when I was a kid, you couldn't play that online. But basically, you can personify these characters, right? And part of that is you can design your home and live in a home. My kids, when I'm working on projects, they think I'm playing Sims. And I'll show you why in the next slide. Is because nowadays we do these 3D renderings, these computer renderings, and there are people that you can populate the models with, and the kids are like, oh, you just play video games all day. Yeah, that's all you do. This is for a house down in Coto de Casa. I'll actually go back one real quick. That's the ADU Raphael. It'll come your way. Okay, this home is in, can anybody guess?
That's Hawaii.
Hawaii. It's in Hawaii. Do you happen to know what that is? You may have heard of it. That's okay. No, have you guys heard of the Extreme Makeover Home Edition? Was a show that was on TV for a while. Okay, this is the Hawaii house. So I was very lucky, and I had the opportunity to work on that house. If you don't know what that show is, it was for basically severely impoverished or basically downtrodden people living a very difficult situation. The community would come together and would completely flip their homes. So if you go to the next slide, we'll come back to this in a second. Anybody who know who that is?
Yeah,
Ty Pennington. Right? So he's annoying. Did you say? Yeah, he is. He's a he's a real pain. So of course on the TV show, what they show is that the home just gets done in a week, right? And I think that home was refurbished basically or redone in about 6 days. There are months of planning and permitting that goes into prior to that ever happening, and the coordination is a complete nightmare.
And their painting prices are ridiculously.
They're not
Okay,
no.
good to hear.
Yeah, and you'll get a kick out of this, Aaron. So when they paint inside that house, all the furniture is already in. They paint around it. They only paint what the camera will see.
No wonder they can do it for $2,000.
That's right.
That is not a $2,000 thing. That's
So
$5,000.
when you pull the furniture away from the wall, there's an outline.
Can I get away with that? Hold your places.
Yeah.
Save some money.
Save money. There's your budget.
Right.
I can give you an HGTV home.
Yeah.
I can give you that.
Yeah.
At a discount.
That'll go a long way. Yeah. Next
That's
page.
comedy.
Yeah. So this was a before. And then the after. Obviously they're not even related on this one. But I was very lucky. I got to work on this home, and then there's one up in El Segundo near the LA airport, and I got to work on that one too, and that was also a blast. That was a lot of fun. How often did the architect have to put long, narrow paths in his blueprints? Hallways.
Always.
That might be it. It might be enough of me talking.
I got it.
Yeah, actually, can you escape out of that one? And then there's a couple of other scenes. I just wanted to show you guys what else we do. So we do aerial views sometimes. That's for a project in Utah, I think. It's a brand new stage, community park, and then restaurants and stuff around it. Oh, do you guys know the lab on Bristol?
Yeah, the lab. Of
Okay,
course.
so I've worked with those guys for years and years. They are wonderful, guys and gals. They're wonderful to work with. They do really creative stuff. They did the lab, the packing house.
Packing house is great.
Yeah, incredible. So so Chris Bennett from their group, he's looking at other projects in other states now. So they're kind of taking that same idea of, again, community building, real human scale architecture, really fun plaza outdoor spaces, and bringing that to other places. So what else can I show you? Here's a color sketch of some stuff that we do for the lab. And then some more black and white stuff. Anyway, I didn't start with this, but I can tell you a little bit about myself. So I was born in the UK. I lived there from 1980 to 1981 and a half, and then I moved here. So I grew up in the US. But I was actually born over there, which some of you know. My wife is from Peru. You wouldn't know it. She's German and Italian background, so we're both Caucasian. But we speak Spanish at home, so the kids are learning Spanish.
Wow.
Yeah, wouldn't know it, right? So we get a lot of looks when we go out, and they're like, where are you guys from? Most people think we're either from Portugal, for some reason, or from Italy. So it always results in a really long story. Because, most of the time if you hear somebody speaking a foreign language and they kind of look that way, I mean, you just sort of assume that they're from that country, but for us it's an explanation. These are just a couple examples of some projects that we're doing, some custom homes that we're doing. This one's down in Rancho Santa Fe in San Diego County. Really, really great client for this one. This is just the garage on the left and then the home on the right. The client for this one had worked on his own home. He actually really wonderful guy. He has a team that designs cell tower sites. So he has engineers in-house, he has architects in-house. He worked at his own home, planning-wise, design-wise, for 2 years. And then he called me and he said, I need help. And he has everything done. I mean, like, the plans are done, he's gone to the HOA already. His wife likes it, and he's like, it just doesn't feel right. Well, little bit by little bit, we've changed everything. That's not how we started. We thought we would just, kind of make some modifications and give him some suggestions, but each time we gave him suggestions, he really liked them. So now it's a whole new house. So anyway, that's what it's shaping up to be. Any questions? Sorry, I talked a lot, nonstop.
That's not so much a question as it's just funny that you hit on it. My son was building The Sims. I think it's called Sims
Yeah.
since he was like 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He'd sit in his room by himself and build cities and homes and did all this stuff, and then he went to college and he took 2 years of architecture, and now he's going to be a doctor because what you said about budgets. Once he lost his free range and he was put under a budget with with planning and with all the other stuff that goes along with it, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. After, he spent almost 15 years of his life doing it, and he quit because of budget. So I just thought that was interesting that you said budget restraints. He didn't have a budget in Dubai, so maybe he should have been an architect in Dubai.
Maybe, yeah.
So on that, I have a question. On that pencil rendering, how long did it take you to do that?
Normally the first layout, because it goes in layers, right? So kind of block it out. Probably would take about 4 hours to kind of block it out. And then maybe to actually draw the final one is pretty quick, probably less than an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But all of the effort is underneath, right? It's like building
Right.
a building, all of that structure and all of that finishing and all that, and then just to put the final
So
touches.
how do you, when you say you block it out, do you get the perspective of just the overall buildings and then you have it go off to that vanishing point?
So in these types of cases, for example, I'll just tell you quickly, this is down in Newport, right near where Duffy Boats, you probably know that, right?
I was gonna say that.
Yeah,
looks like it.
that's right. Yeah, so they were Duffy was revamping their store, or their showroom, I guess. And so the team that was in this firm, they had designed all the buildings around it and revamped the buildings around it in terms of design. They gave me plans, so 2D plans, and then 2D elevations, so I could see the facades, right? And then yes, I picked the viewpoint, thinking that if we were over the water, then you could get like some nice foreground and then really showcase the buildings at a certain angle. And then using like the techniques to find, like you said, the vanishing points and the heights, then I could basically create the skeleton underneath. And then a lot of it is shade, shadow, and kind of entourage. So like the little guy in the kayak, or the little people in their umbrellas and drinks and tables and that kind of stuff. But the heavy lifting is in getting the right angle and representing the proportions correctly.
Amazing.
With the sketches, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of the impact it has on when you're showing something that's very filled out to a client. You got like a little kayaker going through, and you got people wandering around. Like, I imagine that, because I always think whenever you're in I don't know, whether it's a shopping mall or a house and they have like the replicas, like you usually don't see the bare bones architecture, and I feel like people, when they want to see what's going on, they want to see all the things. So I'm imagining that, like you said, not a lot of people do it this way, but I'm assuming it's had a pretty positive impact.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like you could do all of this without having any people or any activity or any boats, and it would probably be pretty boring.
It would be lifeless.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, in part, the entourage helps kind of create that ambiance, but the other thing it does is it gives it scale. Otherwise, it's really hard to sort of know,
Right.
Yeah.
is this 12 feet? Is it 5 feet? And so, because we can all relate to a human size, or maybe even a kayak and a human, but so it gives it some nice scale.
So how did you, because it looks like you took a drone and you
Right.
shot down from that angle.
Right, there's nothing physical into it. It's more calculating where that height would
Okay.
be, and then starting with the vanishing points, the heights and the proportions of the buildings, and then I had to learn the rules of perspective of how things recede to their vanishing points, and a lot of it really has to do with sort of the angle that you pick that's more dynamic. I mean, if it's just straight on, then it sort of loses that energy. And what can be really difficult is to find where to stop, because this building obviously continues, and then the scene obviously continues that way. and then to show more detail sort of in the front or the middle rather than in the rear. So there are a lot of tricks that I painstakingly had to learn and did not get right 99% of the time.
Are you able to do it on one sheet, or do you like have vellums where you can trace through, so you're doing it on multiple sheets?
Multiple sheets.
Multiple sheets.
But multiple layers.
Okay.
So what I learned to tell myself is that if I always draw as if it's not the final, you're much more relaxed.
Yeah.
And you just draw, right? If you're thinking, okay, this one has to be right, you have to get the shadows right, then you're rigid and it doesn't flow. So, and that's one thing I really love about architecture is it's sort of left brain and right brain. It's creative and it's structural to it. So it has to have its limits.
You do that by hand? Or?
That's by hand. Yeah. Yeah. What else can I tell you? With a ruler.
He closes his eyes.
Yeah.
just wins it.
With a ruler.
He drinks.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of that, so all architects have to learn how to write. You've probably seen architectural lettering. You know, it's kind of a special lettering. When I was first learning that, because we used to practice for an hour every day when we came into the office. And one of my mentors said, you should have a drink before you do that, and then you just sort of lighten up. Yeah, but you do. You have to be loose and be creative. If you get too rigid, it doesn't work, and it shows. It'll show if it's too rigid. That's part of the problem with the computerized ones is everything is at the same level of detail, right? So like you can sort of import, like Sims, you can import these plants, but the plant has the stem and the flower and the little bee on the flower, and so it's really hard to pick a focal point. Whereas when you do it by hand, I get to play with what's in focus and what's out of focus and draw your eye to a certain part with contrast and that kind of stuff.
Do you ever combine the two? Do you ever use the computer and then add?
That is a really great question. Yes, that's actually one of the tricks is to use, because people are building computer models nowadays, it's much easier to get that computer model and then render it in more of a softer appearance. Yeah, and actually that happens too because when developers, because I used to work with a lot of big home builders and developers, when they go to present to the city, for example, they very typically already have all the design finished, but they want to present this image that is sort of still in flux to give the city the perception that they're going to be able to make changes. And so then they soften it up in order for it to look like it's still being designed. They've already got it figured out, and they had to figure it out. It's not a trick from a negative standpoint. They had to figure it out in order to figure out budgets, in order to figure out whether they can actually do it or not. So there's a reason to their madness. Yeah.
I bet you did this before you have kids, right?
More
You
time.
should see the work now.
Yeah. No. I did before and after. Yeah.
Was there a main precipice for why you opened your own shop or whatever? Like, was it just
Yeah.
you wanted to have more structure of it yourself or control, or is just life worked that way? Or?
Both. I got a lot of great experience working for firms, working for other people, and then the kids came along. I was tired of traveling, so I took that out of the equation, and then I had an opportunity to run the architecture and interior design department of actually an ADU firm, a firm that does only ADUs, design build, up in the Bay Area. And so I was commuting up there once a week, and that basically ran like a contract for a year. So I left the firm I was with doing this kind of stuff. I ran their shop, and we did, I think, 19 ADUs in 1 year, which was pretty incredible, like through design through permitting. And then they ran out of money because they didn't manage
Sounds
it.
like construction.
They didn't manage it very well. That's a story for a different day, which I like telling because it's we learned a lot. Both and the owner of that company and I are still very good buddies, and we still talk to each other a lot. And then so that ended, and then when that ended, I sort of had to say, well, I could go back to doing the 8 to 5, or I could try to do my own thing. And so since then, that's what I did.
Quick testimony about Simon. I met him. I'm proud to be the guy that invite you to be part of this group.
Yeah, thank you.
And I was doing a workshop a few years ago about ADUs, and he showed up, and we connect. And I got a job in San Clemente, a multifamily job, a big job. We're still working on it. And Simon stepped in, and we're working together. We're doing other projects together, and we're we just, I'm super happy that we're doing our first development. We're doing the ADU in Los Angeles, and Simon's doing that. He's a great guy, straight, easy going, surfer, and a good friend.
Surfer, yeah.